Ah. Hello, key holders. My name is Brogard DM, and welcome back to another episode of Our Life Beginning and Always. We're on to number 13 this time. Woohoo! Oh god, it's been a journey to get here. Let's see what happens. Don't know if I'll leave this in, but I'm hoping to post 3 episodes of Our Life a week. This series has been going by slowly, but I think that with how little storage space it takes up on my computer, I should be able to get them out like that, especially with me not editing them as much anymore, because I feel like the edits distract from the story more than they help, unless there's specific moments where I want to add in an edit. But yeah, for now, we'll just get straight into the video, and we are starting with Road Trip. So without further ado, let's not go into the save movie menu, and let's get going with another narration. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park, because we're in California. You glance at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. She does not look awake at all. That is me. 100% that is me. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. Relate to Ma, it was way too early. Personally, you were as raring to go as your mom. You felt you were a middle of the ground. You could relate to Ma, it was way too early. I think I've established that Aura's a night person. You yawned and rubbed your eyes. Still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew, and that helped make you a bit more alert. And then, at the end of the chain came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Aura is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. You want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for the younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior. The sleeping arrangements included Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. bend. Yes, it's a large bend. The friggin' trailer just bent around. It just keeps going around in circles because it's like an L. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kira was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You thought it was unfair Cove had to sleep on the floor. I feel like sharing a bed with my parents was gonna be awkward. You weren't a kid anymore, and yet you were gonna have to sleep next to your moms. They assured you they'd try to give you space for the one night you had to share, but you were still not pleased. All right, you lot. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. The word. Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips. How about you, Aura? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? You weren't sure about that. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember. Ma chuckled and gave you a squeeze on the shoulder. I get like that on trips too, so I've learned to pack extra just in case. I, or anyone else forgets, with the amount of supplies we've stuffed into the RV. I think we'll be okay. It's only a few days after all. Thanks, Ma. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow, and blanket. Usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things such as... bag of... Nah. An MP3 player with headphones. With so much time going to be spent driving in the car, you wanted to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. A portable gaming console. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself traveling there and back. A couple of things to read. You had packed one of your old favorites, and a new one you'd never tried before. You knew you'd have plenty of time for them, and both on such a long drive. Pencils and paper. You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park, or if you had to write anything down, or if you need to pass time just doodling. And I don't think I need a bag of makeup, your favorite stuffed animal, a ball, your camera. I don't feel like Aura's very big on makeup. She's kind of like a loner. She's not one to dress up and be all like pretty. I don't think Aura would have a camera, a ball, a bag of makeup. She doesn't have a phone, but I don't think she'd have a camera either. And I don't think she'd have a ball, and that was everything. Oh god, Russian. Here, let me take that for you, Aura. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fit. You let Kira take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kira and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finished packing the suitcases away, while your mom... not finished. While your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartment of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been anywhere together. Anywhere together. You spend a lot of time in the house, but that doesn't count. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slung over her shoulders, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually, she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You supposed any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. So is Elizabeth like Umaru? I don't know if that's the character's actual name, but I know that's the name of the anime, where there's like the shut-in girl who becomes a little chibi when she enters the house, but she's like this perfect being when she's outside of it. Or she acts like she is, but she's like a teenager. It's like a teenage like comedy. I watched it back in middle school. I can't even barely remember it, but yeah, I think Elizabeth's probably more of an Umaru. Okay. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You were curious about the RV. Okay. Aura may be a nerd, but I think she'd be excited for the trip. The Redwoods is kind of a, like, really interesting place. I've never been there. Love to go. Maybe I will someday. I love visiting California. Don't live there, so there you go. But, yeah, I think she'd be excited for the trip, too. It was great to get away and explore new places. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was a touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kira were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. Cove and freaking Mr. Holden are outnumbered. They are outnumbered by a lot. But that's how it goes. You felt like you could finally relax now, too. Time slipped by as morning faded. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out from the driver's seat, and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving her mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. Nice sunglasses, bro. We're making good progress. Yes. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did. And I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place.
Nah.
Are they getting back together? That'd be a little weird. I don't know. Okay, I'll let this continue. Maybe I'm over-insinuating. I don't need sleep. I've still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home. And Kira rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kira laughed lightheartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for you all. Lucky for all of us. We have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow. That's just enough time to write up my last will and testament. Not you two. The rest of the group laughed while Caliph pouted, and you gave him an apologetic shrug. I feel like this is lighthearted joking. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. That's just aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old. I think. But did you ask the year the model was before you rented it? Kira wrinkled her nose in thought.
Hey!
Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held onto the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a weight settled on your black hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of a bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on top of your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. Hell yeah. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with the group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to check to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep, curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kira was driving, the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kira herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep, despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling onto the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing.
Good night.
Get a good night rest, Aura. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. Been a long time since I was out in nature like this. Ma's voice has changed a lot from the Undyne it originally was. I just feel like Undyne didn't fit her. I can see her as more of like the I guess bread maker, the bacon bringer in the relationship. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but Mom seems more like the kid taking care of her, and Ma seems more like the person who goes out and works and stuff. Maybe I'm misreading, but yeah. Excuse the sip of water. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer, while your moms whispered about the park and forests in general, with the sound of their voices in the background. Eventually, you nodded off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You had an okay sleep. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you had stopped listening to them all together. I feel that. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. Ooh, I like the scene. It didn't take much longer until you exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park.
Wow.
Wow, nice hoodie, Cove. I think I picked that for you as well. Wow. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person.
Come on.
Smile, you two. You spun just in time for Kira to snap a picture of you and Cove together before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. Oh, why do you look sad about that? Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily, while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your moms must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide, if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You weren't as impressed as the others. We're being so touristy. Nah, there's nothing wrong with being touristy. I'm touristy. When I was visiting in California and I went to like the Winchester Mystery House and like, no, why am I forgetting the name? Monterey. As I went to Monterey and that stuff, I was recording and taking pictures the entire time. It's just beautiful, especially considering I live in like pretty much a desert. So, the oceans are amazing. So I can only imagine the redwoods are just as pretty. Are the redwoods in California, actually? I may be completely mistaken about that. 1 second. Research time, everyone. Yes, they are. I'm not a dumbass. I think I would be fascinated by the sensations surrounding you. Birds' calls echoed all around you, and once or twice something would rustle in the underbrush. You strained your eyes through the trees for any sign of wildlife, and managed to catch a glimpse of a rabbit bounding through the foliage. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was gonna say something haunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkward, and continued walking along. Just watch, next year they'll be talking about their new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You supposed he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Maybe one day we will be related legally anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. But she almost immediately dropped the tone and nonchalantly said her real thoughts. At least, that's what Ma thinks. Cove still blushed, which made Elizabeth smile triumphantly, as though that was her whole purpose for teasing him. Victory! Heck yeah, fist pump! Then he mumbled quietly, refusing to make eye contact with either of you. Don't know why you think you're so funny when no one else does. I'll marry Cove on the same day Shiloh's mom marries Cove's dad. Oh, great. Then I'll have an excuse not to be at your wedding. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the response she was looking for, and you and Cove swapped amused looks. I like the callback. It was a bit mean to bring up her old friend in that context, but she was asking for it. You casually wondered where Shiloh might be now. Maybe that was a little rude. Whatever. The day continued on, with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. The long trip wasn't worth the day. You were glad you got to do this in the end. It was definitely a special experience, and one you'd remember for a long time to come. You smiled to yourself, committing the sights and sounds to memory. Oh, is that the end? Oh, that was kind of a short one. Your group made it back to camp, just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing, one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. You hung out with Cove. We might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long they'll be out there for. You took a seat on the sofa, and Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. Your cheeks warmed a little at that. Being close to him never failed to feel exciting. You'd seen Cove nearly every day for the past 5 years, but seeing him in a jacket was still somewhat unusual. In Southern California, he could get away with that. It was a simple difference from his normal style, yet you couldn't help noticing the way he looked right now. It looked great on him. In fact, Cove always looked nice. When Cove cleared his throat, your eyes snapped to his, and he had an eyebrow raised and had clearly caught you staring at him. Is everything okay? That looks nice on you. Cove immediately blushed at the unexpected compliment. What? He didn't say anything more than that one-worded question. You decided to elaborate further. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot, and it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I'm the same way. They're bulky and heavy, and they usually make me feel too warm. Yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible as well. Pants and a t-shirt. That's my style, and during the winter, only a jacket. Even when it's blizzarding. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. You perked up hearing that. He noticed you too. Sly, Cole. Very sly. You asked him what he liked to see others wear. Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on another person? Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he'd had the chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing! That was funny. You laughed out loud, and Cove gave you a dry look. Come on, that's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. And answer with what you do mean then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath, and you couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. I swear I won't make fun of you. That's not really it. Cove seemed pretty grumpy about your statement, but you weren't ready to give up so easily. Please. Cove sighed and looked down at his lap, where he was fidgeting with his hands, still reluctant to give an answer.
I don't know.
I don't know. He made an unimpressed sound over how this was going. Are you sure? Fine, I guess I kind of like ankle bracelets. Ankle bracelets? Yeah, everyone can wear a pretty bracelet. Wrist ones are cool too, but they're pretty normal. There's something fun or flirty about an ankle bracelet.
I mean...
It's more special or something. I don't know how to explain it. Cove brushed his knuckle against his cheek awkwardly, seeming unsure where to go from here. I like them too. Cove smiled at you, happy to hear he wasn't the only one who felt that way. When he said nothing else, you took a moment to gather your own thoughts. You were happy to hear more about Cove, but it didn't really change anything. Maybe wear more your anklets more often now. Anklets more now. No, you had to get an anklet on ASAP. You need to see how Cove would react to that. Cove looked away again, feeling awkward about this. You gave him an understanding look, and usually he wouldn't start to smile like normal again, but not this time. His expression only stiffened more. You were surprised to see him like this, as he always bounced back pretty quickly after being flustered. Cove? Still, he couldn't look at you, and now even his breathing was growing tense. He began to click. He was trying to build himself up enough to say something hard for him. You waited for it silently, until finally he peeked your way through the corner of his eyes. You were fully attentive by this point, for whatever he was going to mention next.
That's,
People having red eyes. That's also something I like. Smooth, buddy. Smooth. Huh? For a moment you were stunned, at a complete loss for words. That was definitely not where you imagined this was going. Cove faced you head on, his expression full of desperate meaning. You got the distinct impression he hadn't chosen that just because he liked the color red. He chose it entirely because it was your eye color. Was he trying to flirt with you? That was all you could think. Your legs felt like jelly, and you wondered if you might fall right off the couch. What do you like for another person, Aura? Pretty hair. Cove's hand distinctly ran through his green hair, but then stopped when he noticed what he was doing. Like yours. Cove blushed a deeper shade of red, and his mouth fell open, acknowledging that you had specified him straight out. Now you were both flirting with each other. He placed his hands in his lap and looked down. It seemed he hadn't expected to get this far. He didn't know where to go from there. With that, the topic abruptly dropped off. Cove officially had no more to say on it. I'm glad that didn't end. I liked that moment. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games. enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading back to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. You enjoyed this mini adventure. Nothing about this was bad. It was short, that was for sure, but you had got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. Didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kira to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove was laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. You made a silly face. Cove rolled his eyes at you, or at least you thought he did. You then gestured for him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually, he managed to maneuver around his sleeping bag. His sleeping dad, not bag. The sleeping old bag, you might say. And make it to the latter, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered, "What?" You invited him up to the loft. "You want to come up?" His eyes widened just so. You could only tell because he had to come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you. "Okay." You broke out into a grin and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Luckily, you were short enough to leave him with some room. "My good choices." That's what I wanted. I wanted this. You laid down next to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go, and was rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. "So, what am I doing here?" "I thought we could hang out. You can sleep here instead of the floor." Cove raised an eyebrow, not having expected you to bring that up now. "I'm not sure about this." Cove swallowed loudly, and you noticed he wouldn't look you in the eyes anymore. You were feeling the nervousness too. The two of you had gotten really close over the years, but this was a different kind of closeness. You couldn't fully explain how you were feeling, but you wanted to continue getting closer to Cove. You thought back to earlier in the evening, when you and Cove had been talking alone on the sofa. He had definitely been flirting then, and now you were here. You nudged closer to him. You inched towards Cove slowly, your legs pressing together in the very limited space. Cove's face flushed dark enough to notice, even in the almost pitch-black RV cabin. The hand resting in front of him tightened, balling into a fist. "You okay?"
Yeah.
I'm fine. I mean, I'm not dying or anything. Cove's eyebrows bent up nervously, but his smile widened. I wasn't gonna be the bold one, but this nervous kid. Jesus, man. He followed your lead and curved himself deeper into the loft and closer to you. He looked away as he did. There was almost no space left between he and you. Cove's breath tickled the side of your face. For a moment you stayed together like that. Neither of you spoke a word. When your eyes locked again, Cove seemed almost taken aback by the situation, as though it hadn't completely hit him what it was going to feel like to do this until just now. He opened his mouth to say something, but shut it tight before anything came out. No. That's too early. That is too early. You snuggled against him. I think that's too early. I am... Aura's confident. Or, don't get me wrong, but they're 13. I get it. Like, that could be the first time, but I don't think so. I think she snuggled against him. You closed the distance completely and nuzzled your face into his chest. You could hear his heart beating rapidly. Cove stiffened and let out a yelp, which he quickly bit down on his lip to stifle. He gave you an apologetic look. This still wasn't bad for him, just surprising. For a few more moments, he settled in, his breaths deep and steady. He rested his chin against the top of your head. You could peek up and see him smiling, and it made you happier to know he was enjoying the moment too. The two of you fell asleep before long, cuddled up together. I feel like, so don't get me wrong, this is romantic. This is a good moment. I'm not saying that, but I don't think it's the right moment for that. I feel like I'm going to have to be the initiator. Let me close this out. At some point. Like, I do understand that. Like, that's kind of how the story seems to be going, is I have to be the initiator between a lot of stuff. It seems like Cove will only initiate things partially, and then it's my choice whether I continue or not, which makes sense. It's a choice and story game, and they want you to have the option to get with other people through the DLCs, which I have all the DLCs, but I'm not going to be doing that. But I feel like this isn't the right moment for that. Maybe once step 2 goes along more, maybe if there's another moment, I'll take it. If there's not, step 3 will be the moment when that happens. And I'm okay with that. I just feel like this wasn't a good moment for that. This is the first time they've done like this. And they're still kids, honestly. So, this is where I want to be. The two of you fell asleep before long, huddled up together. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked, next to you, Cove was gone. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to find out where he had gone. Maybe he had snuck back to his spot on the floor during the night. However, you soon noticed him sitting on the couch, talking quietly with his mom, his head hung in embarrassment. Your movement gave you away, and Kira suddenly looked up and caught your eye. She simply smiled amusedly at you, and it was obvious what had happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was going to be a long time before you lived this one down. If you ever did. I do not care. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their room, dressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of the vacation. Kira suggested a few different travel games. She used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. I like Kira. Hey Kira, I'm good. I told you straight off the bat that I like Cove. He's a cool kid. So you're gonna have to deal with that. But I don't think she'll tell anyone. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what had happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. Don't apologize, man. It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until tomorrow. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. You missed being near Cove. The two of you had basically been living together for 3 days. It was nice. But you knew that it wouldn't be the last time that you two would spend time together, and that thought comforted you. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go on like normal. Okay, that was an extremely long one. Okay, key holders. I know I said I was going to do 2, but I'm wanting to post these more often. So I'm going to stop this episode here, and then we will have another episode within a few days, within 2 to 3 days. That will be Mall, and then birthday. I'm planning on trying to get them all out this week, along with that other one. So I'm going to try and post like 3 or 4 a week, like I said. I'm going to be mainly focusing on this series. I do have something in the works that I have been editing, that I actually will say here. I am doing a co-op Elden Ring randomizer run with Panda Bread. It's taking forever to edit because there's like 20 hours of footage that I'm having to edit through right now to get down into some episodes, and a lot of it is just us running around quietly picking up items. So that's going to be a while before it's released, but I wanted to let you know why it's been so long since I've posted a video. I've been working on that. But I'm going to try and start getting the Our Life series out more frequently. I know I've said that in the past, but yeah. For now, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'm going to close the door on this one.